Crisis! This time a super crisis. I know it's not Robin's costume, although for some, that may be it. Now, we've been following DC crisis stories leading up to the first big crisis, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Not that some of these other ones aren't big, but that's the big universe-altering one. And so far, our crises have taken us to the JSA and JLA team-ups. That's where they start, and that's where they've continued. Although there are some other comics that have the word crisis in the title, perhaps we'll have to start bringing them in. But today's outing is once more one of the team-ups, and it's taking us to 1967. And some panels of Hal being brutally beaten. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and it's time for the super crisis that struck Earth 2. Now, the last crisis that we took a look at was Crisis Between Earth 1 and Earth 2. And that one had a bit more of a comedic bend to it. Now, there was a reason for that, and I was a bit remiss to not go into it in detail, nerd-level detail. I made a joke about it, but it wasn't enough, so now we shall discuss. 1966 is a special year at DC because it's also the year that the Batman 66 TV series drops, and that was something that was worked on fairly synergistically between the Batman comics and the show itself. We've discussed that when we've done videos about, say, the creation of BATGIRL, which was a co-creation. Also, there's the fact that several storylines were actually pulled directly from comics. The producer did go through and mine looking for specific things that could be used. And there were a couple of other characters that were supposed to be actual comic characters but didn't work out. Some other characters that were created that were supposed to transfer over that didn't make it. It was a whole thing. The thing is, the show played up the camp factor on purpose. Even at the time, people were aware of it. However, it worked to great effect and the show was incredibly popular and also raised the profile of Batman. And as a result, certain things started to bleed back, including the tone and also what was dubbed Batmania. The comics that influenced the adaptation would then be influenced by said adaptation. So sometimes you would see that in certain comics having a bit more of a comedic tone. You would definitely see it in Batman appearing on covers in grand relief, even if he wasn't fully in the story or doing a lot. It's why he's so huge on the cover of those 66 issues despite not being the focus. That's still lightly in play here, but not to the same degree. But that 66 Halo impact was huge. It impacted things outside of comics too, other shows. Some series had to pivot entirely, like My Beloved Man from U.N.C.L.E. Now, as for today's crisis, it takes us over to Justice League issues 55 and 56. And it's gonna be the last one with this creative team. Gardner Fox is writing, Mike Sekowsky is penciling, and Sid Green is on inks. Fox would leave the company in 1968, when at the time they were refusing to give benefits and health insurance to older/aging creators. And while he will still be writing at the time of the next JSA team-up, that one doesn't have crisis in the title. And those are the rules we established in the first video of this. We're looking at the ones that have crisis in the name, otherwise it may be insurmountable. At some point if we want to, we can just do the annual team-ups, but that day is not today. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this crisis and our adult Robin. The cover features our grown-up Robin, it even says so on it, in a costume so reminiscent of Batman, it's almost like having him on the cover. Let me know what you think of this costume design. You can see what they were going for. It is very much meant to be an updated Batman costume, but it almost feels like the Robin elements are a bit tacked on. Some think it's terrible, just try again. Others can appreciate it for what it means and symbolizes for Robin, and others, they like it. So let me know what you think of it. It's no disco wing, that's for sure. And as always, stay tuned to the end because we're going to read some letters from the time. And if you think people are tired of Batman now, get ready for some letters from 1967. The super crisis that struck Earth 2 is an interesting outing in the crisis lexicon. And while more grounded than an antimatter man that's walking towards Earths that have begun to be forced to move closer together because of a space warper, it's in some ways a bit more off the rails, at least in terms of how the plot resolves itself and moves. Yes, I'm stalling because our intro is 4 individuals who get powers or infused with some kind of energy from these floating black spheres. And the first is a Chinese man named Hao Chu. And I'm saying it with that tone because it's most likely he has that name for one joke that they're gonna make later on in the issue. It's a Johnny Thunder joke. It made me go look up if Hao Chu was an actual name because it was leaving me with some kind of feelings. Now, as for who he is, he's a criminal who's about to be executed by firing squad. And then the orb comes and imbues him with powers. Put a pin in that because it's gonna matter and make him a bit different from the others. Now next we have Claire Morton, who is a stenographer who's out looking at some jewels, wishing that she could have them. And then she gets orbed up. In Chicago, USA, stenographer Claire Morton is admiring a jewelry display when, I wonder if I'll ever be rich enough to wear such gorgeous gems. Ugh, what hit me? As that eerie ebony is absorbed into her body. Why wait, I can take all the jewels I want. Right now. Our next victim is in London, Horace Rowland. I'm telling you their names because the comic took the time. Just like that one crisis where they named all the criminals who became the Justice League, and then we never saw them again. Now he gets obsessed with money and so goes and robs a bank. But my favorite of these created villains is definitely Marty Baxter. For when he transforms, he ends up with a vendetta against sports. All of them. I'd be out there batting the World Series if I didn't come up with arthritis, making it impossible for me to swing a bat. What hit me? My arthritis pain. Gone. I feel like a new man. Bursting with power. In sudden, savage anger, he grips the box railing and, I'll make the sports world pay for what they did to me. I'm going to smash down the stadium. Down with all sports. Those poor baseball players, they just look so confused. Also, with this type of beef, he should clearly be arching the sportsmaster, even though he is also a villain. But they would have problems. Now, since they're criminals now, they get costumes. Although Claire's is kind of pushing it, she just looks very fashionable for 1967. At least Horace had the decency to dress like the Monopoly Man. He even got a special hat with a pound sign on it. Now, our reveal is that all of this is happening on Earth 2. Which is less surprising if one read the title, because it did say that it was a crisis that struck Earth 2. Now, each of these JSA JLA team-ups, we have a new roll call, which means we get some new characters to appear on Earth 2, and this time we get Earth 2 Wonder Woman, and also Robin. At this emergency meeting, Hawkman serves as chairman. Before we get down to the urgent business at hand, I want to welcome Robin as a new member of the Justice Society. It's an honor and a privilege, Hawkman. The idea that Robin would continue on into adulthood and kind of assume the mantle of Batman is a long-held one, and you can see it here. It's very usually the assumption that he will just kind of assume Batman's role, not necessarily that he'll have his own identity, which they will later do with Nightwing, but this is getting close to that, in that while he is taking over Batman's position, protecting Gotham and being a superhero, he's kept his own name, so there is that kind of independence, although the costume does not signify that because it's just a modified version of Batman's. But in some ways, that's tying in the type of legacy relationship they have in this time period, which is extremely positive. The Batman-Robin relationship of the 60s and the Silver Age is not fraught. That's gonna come later. In some stories, you'll just straight up see him become Batman 2, like in Alfred's fanfiction, which we've talked about. However, again, in a way, this is a bit of a precursor to Nightwing, because it is him becoming a hero in his own right under his own name. This comic also then positions Batman as older alongside the rest of the JSAers, because we have Robin here as an adult. Significant as Batman hasn't been seen in Earth 2 on these crossover tales at this point. No longer the boy wonder, the grown-up Robin acknowledges the round of applause. First of all, I want to convey Batman's best wishes. Though he's in semi-retirement, he still goes out in special cases, which is what's keeping him from attending this meeting. Other things are more important than you guys. Johnny Thunder is no such excuse. He's always late. Shots fired at Johnny. Last time Johnny was late, it was because his villainous Earth 1 counterpart rewrote reality. But that was undone by the end, so nobody remembers that except for the Thunderbolt, which means that Johnny will continue to catch strays. Our man says that Robin has joined during a super crisis. He said the title. See, they're already aware of how much they're using the word crisis. The 4 individuals who got orbed are off committing crime sprees. And you know what that means? It means that they're all split off into groups, so the heroes need to break off into groups and go fight them. Wildcat and Robin take the, I guess, Robin plane, even though they still call it the Bat Jet, but come on, there's an R on it now. They're gonna take on the Smashing Sportsman. Phenomenal orb-based power. Doesn't make you better at naming things. Also, all their powers are gonna be a little vague. They're gonna explain them as they go. You're not gonna know going into it that, oh, they all have super strength or they all have this. It varies from scene to scene. Landing, the Justice Society duo begins a search for its quarry that ends when, there he is, blowing the water out of the pool with one puff of breath. Let's take the big blowhard. Swoosh! The fight goes poorly for the heroes, embarrassingly bad. You used to be known as the boy wonder. Now you're the grown-up groaner. Oh, and he actually groans. And that's my way of taming a wild cat. Breaking its spine? Dang. It gets to the point where Smashing Sportsman is annoyed that they sent such low-tier people to take him on. He says that they should have sent Superman or Dr. Fate. They will send Superman, just not this Superman. He also then proceeds to smash the sports stadium he was demolishing with Robin and Wildcat's bodies. We cut away from that so you don't have to think about the fact that they're probably dead. So that we can go to Wonder Woman, who has to take on Gem Girl. She took that name because she steals gems. Wonder Woman doesn't have a partner. We don't have enough people for everybody to double up. This way we can just have a one-on-one chick fight, even though it's not much of a chick fight. And this works out great for Wonder Woman. This way no one will see her shame. Gem Girl has vague gem-based powers, like she's able to use them based on certain abilities that certain gems should have to do things like bring a dinosaur skeleton to life. She makes a Marilyn Monroe reference from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and she's also able to get out of the magic lariat, because some diamonds are magic and diamonds are a girl's best friend. We're playing fast and loose with Gem Girl. You can't argue with jewel lore or Gem Girl's law. So as one can see, this comic is playing more with the Gardner-Fox formula that was very strongly in place at the beginning of these team-ups, and also was just a writing technique that he used frequently, which was this process of having each of the groups go through each event one at a time. Over the years, as you've seen, as we've been looking at these, it starts to break up, but sometimes it still comes to the fore, and this is one of those issues. And those kind of things can be a bit repetitive. So now we get to see the 2 remaining defeats. The Money Master, that's the name he chose, has to go up against Hawkman and Mr. Terrific. There's the Money Master helping himself to all those pound notes. I'll give him a pounding he didn't expect. No. No, thank you. We don't want any. Now, this issue has a lot of thought balloons from both the heroes and the villains, which are used in this outing to fill in even more information about how certain things are working. For example, Moneymaster is thinking aggressively about how his powers work. In his case, he can alter his state by touching things, like absorb the properties of marble by touching it. Hawkman and Mr. Terrific get crushed by a chandelier. And Our Man is the one who they sent to China, even though he's the one who has to take the Miraclo pill to get his powers for 1 hour. That's why he's Our Man. He's got powers for an hour. I was so curious if anybody was going to write in and talk about how long it would have taken him to fly there, because they show him take the pill before he leaves. That's not going to last unless he kept popping them on the way. That can't be good for him. Also, maybe they dropped him off first. If so, in a tale full of excessive detail, that one is not shared. As time goes on, the Miraclo pills and Our Man are going to evolve into a story about performance-enhancing drugs and also drug addiction. And you can see how creators would get there even in reading these stories where it's not hinted at. It's not hard to make that leap. Now, these super criminals live in the time of the comics code, so humiliation is good enough for them. Nobody's dying. Instead, they all reconvene back at headquarters, where Johnny Thunder has arrived, and he chides them, saying that they should have waited for him. He could have used the magic of his genie, the Thunderbolt. Magic will solve everything. That's what Dr. Fate would say if he was there. I think it's a testament to both the commitment to having Johnny Thunder as a comedic character and the in-canon annoyance that most of the characters have with him that they didn't wait. Thunderbolt, get out there and capture Horace Rowland, Claire Morton, Martin Baxter, and Hao Chu.
What was that last name?
Hao Chu.
Gesundheit.
I truly believe that joke was the root of the name, and then it just all worked backwards. Now this issue's running out of pages, so the next fight happens off panel. Those super criminals are too powerful for a genie. And then Johnny gets another idea. What if they just grab the heroes from Earth 1? They're probably not doing anything. Except they totally were, because they all arrive in various degrees of undress. Their clothes are all ripped, even though in Ollie's case, it looked like he kind of strategically ripped it. Make sure his chest is all open. They talk about how a super crisis has struck their world. Huh? Only Superman, Flash, Green Arrow, and Green Lantern. Where are the others?
You said bring some. To me, some means 4.
You know, he did grab 4 pretty strong ones. Well, 3, and then also Green Arrow. All right, I'll let Ollie fire the shots. Now, something similar is happening on Earth 1, but in a bit of a unique twist for these crossovers, we never go to Earth 1 and we never see it. Most of the time in these, they'll cross Earths, and there'll be at least some moment where you get to see the other Earth. That's not the case with this one. We keep it to Earth 2. Earth 2 has the floor. The JLA decide that, they'll stay and help. They're there anyway, and anything that they figure out, their Earths are so similar, they'll probably be able to take it and apply it back to Earth 1. Now, the Thunderbolt is the MVP this issue because he figures out what's going on. In fact, he's there berating Johnny for not asking because he just needs to ask him who these creatures are and what they want, and he can figure everything out. So now he's got charts. He's gonna make it all make sense. Get ready for Just Go With It science as presented by a pink genie.
The black spheres come from a universe in which they evolved in positive time to a peak at which point they became the ultimate and super intelligent life. But then they started to devolve rapidly in negative time, losing their intelligence. To escape their doom, they sought out another planet still in positive time, ours, in order to maintain and even increase their superpowers. Because time was short, they had to hurl themselves at random into our universe.
The Thunderbolt is looking mighty sinister in these panels. Missed opportunity for an evil genie story where he absorbs an orb. So it's said that only 4 of these aliens were able to be absorbed, so RIP the rest of that species. But we shouldn't feel too bad, because contact with the human life force, as it's phrased, causes humans to carry out their secret criminal wishes. Which is why it was so important to start the story off with their thought balloons like that. But also another way that Hao Chu is different, because he was already a criminal. He's a bit unique. This is one of those stories where they will state rules on the way that things work, but sometimes things don't fully align, or you have to do some kind of finagling mental gymnastics to make it work. Also, the spheres are slowly gaining permanent control of their human hosts. I like to imagine that the spheres work that way because they're from negative time and hence bring out negative traits. That doesn't entirely bear up to scrutiny in the story, but it's the kind of reasoning I can see the Silver Age getting behind. Kinda. The Silver Age likes to give scientific explanations for things that are meant to sound plausible. It's one of the hallmarks of the era. Now, this giant information spiel is what ends issue 55 and leads us into 56, with Robin providing the intended curiosity hook of, I wish I knew how this was going to turn out, Batman. Oh wait, he's on a trip. To figure it out, we need issue 56, which has a Let Them Fight cover of the JSA versus the JLA. Hal looks crazed because you can see his pupils in the mask. This is also the cover that they chose for the DC's Finest collection for The Bridge Between Earths. The story's in there, along with several others. Now, part 2 is called The Negative Crisis on Earths 1 and 2. It's nice of them to include Earth 1 in the title. Again, we're not going to see it. Also, the villains are called the Black Sphered villains on the recap page, but it doesn't give them their villain names. And they have them because they call them it in the story. Do not shy away from Gem Girl and the Smashing Sportsman and the Money Master. Now, the heroes are still having an exposition meeting even after the full page recap, as they discuss that when these spheres fully assume control of their hosts, they will become unbeatable. But Robin has an idea. What if they could find some negative energy and absorb it and become more powerful? He suggests this despite the explanation last issue that it would ramp up criminal tendencies. And the explanation that they give for why they go with it isn't that heroes are pure and have no criminal tendencies. No, it's just that's their only choice. I kind of do like that they didn't go with the whole like we would never. They totally would. So they decide to put this in play, and the Earth 1 heroes and Wonder Woman head out looking for the radiation. It's a tad grim even though they don't linger on it, but you see all these shriveled husks of the black what would have been sphere aliens. Just basically the corpses of this race that they're out there collecting trace amounts of lingering radiation that has seeped out of them. We're not supposed to dwell on their fate though. Were they always evil? Were they transformed by negative energy? Are they just a desperate race trying to survive? Are they indeed power mad as the Thunderbolts seem to imply? Don't think about that. Watch Wonder Woman mine for their essence with her tiara and Flash karate chop it out of the ground. One word of caution. We know that the radiation made the 4 humans it entered evil against their will. The same thing may happen to whichever 4 members are chosen to receive it. It's a calculated risk we'll have to take. As a safeguard, the rest of us can accompany the irradiated force that if they turn evil, we'll be on hand to stop them. If we can. Look at how cheerful Green Arrow is saying that. Maybe we'll beat them. Probably not, based on the ones you're gonna pick. They choose Green Lantern, the Flash, Wonder Woman, and Hourman to get infused. They say they do this because they all have powers. It's nice of them to include Hourman like that. He must have just taken one of his pills. They don't choose Superman because they say he's immune to radiation. The panel where they split up to take on the super criminals is fantastic, as it features not 1, not 2, but 3 sets of heroes riding on each other. I'm still trying to discern the expression on Ollie's face as he rides Hawkman. Robin looks like he's trying to be taken as seriously as possible as he sits cross-legged on Superman, and Wonder Woman is determinedly surfing on the genie with Johnny. Green Lantern at least made a nice seat, a basket for Wildcat and Mr. Terrific. It won't matter, they're still gonna beat him ruthlessly later. Now Superman, Robin, and Hourman are off to take on the Smashing Sportsman, and he must be thrilled. He wanted to fight Superman. He's in Rome, destroying the Colosseum. Down with all sports, present or historic. Next he'll go to the future. But as soon as they get there, Hourman turns on them. So for this issue, we also have the each group experiences the same events format, but this time it's going to be the 4 irradiated heroes turned bad against their own teammates, as they must contend with the sudden and inevitable betrayal that they knew was going to happen. The structure of these fights is that it all looks dire until they each discover a weakness. A different weakness each time. These fights are the highlight of the issue, and they do have some funny moments. Some seem very deliberate, others less so. Superman, as often happens in these crisis stories, begs the question of why did they bring him when Hourman conceals kryptonite in his fists and just starts to beat the super out of him. He can't just be man. Batman already has that meme. Man, an absolute man. You've dug yourself a watery grave, Robin. The good in Hourman didn't last long. I'm ready to take another crack at Hourman now. Hourman full on tries to drown Robin, and all the info we get is from the thought balloons, which ends up being a bit amusing. Because they're all being thought, it makes some of them more menacing than they're most likely intended. Squeezing the muscles of his jaw, forcing open his mouth. Maybe a good swallow of water will speed his collapse. Drowning. Utterly limp, Hourman is dragged from the waters of the Tiber. Now that we know, thanks to Hourman, that the negative radiation within humans makes them vulnerable to water, we can take Marty Baxter. Was this the inspiration for the ending of Signs? No, that was probably the Outer Limits episode, Specimen Unknown, or other sci-fi stories where surprise water takes people out. But also, Superman, I think most humans are vulnerable to being forcibly drowned. Things that can kill the body they inhabit. Their only weakness. Actually, it's not, because the Flash gets to go to China this time, and he's found to be allergic to Chinese wisteria. It's written as though that's just an allergy he has and not an allergy that the negative radiation beings have, and if that's the case, he really should have told them that before they put him on the China team. And when the Scarlet Speedster is drowned in the shower of wisteria petals, we're loving drowning this issue. He's in no condition to cause us any more trouble. Wow, I never really noticed how nice Green Arrow's boots were. I like them. Also, is the Flash dying? They're allergic and vulnerable to the Chinese wisteria blossom. All we have to do is take a big supply of it with us. Why had this moved to being a general allergy? Now, the Money Master one amuses me the most because despite it being clearly stated that this was going to go awry, Wildcat and Mr. Terrific get so angry at Green Lantern for betraying them. In all fairness, he did abruptly dissolve the platform they were riding on. As he drops, Wildcat twists his body in a frantic, desperate acrobatic maneuver and grabs hold of GL's ankle. "You're taking us with you, traitor!" Gotta follow Wildcat's lead. Grab hold of him. This issue is very much taking the time to cross its T's and dot its I's, not leave any gaps. We are also in the era, if you follow the letters column, where people will go through and try and pick things apart. So in some ways, I'm curious if that's a reaction to that or just a stylistic choice at the time. Before Green Lantern can summon up enough willpower to activate his ring, he takes it on the chin by the man of 1,000 talents, including kicks. Now, Green Lantern's yellow weakness is a known quantity, and that's why Wildcat is going to get some yellow roses to take him out. I guess he was going to maybe smother him with them. That seems to be what we're doing, just trying to asphyxiate or drown people. But that weakness doesn't work this issue because he's infused with the power of the Black Sphere. How do you like them apples, fella? That negative radiation is making me act like a camp-style Green Lantern. Ah, see, they mentioned the word camp because there is an acknowledgement that that's kind of what's being played up across the line at the moment. It makes me curious if that's a loving camp reference or a slightly annoyed tongue-in-cheek camp reference. Either way, it was said last issue that this brought out latent criminal tendencies. That means, Hal, deep down, you were always camp. You could actually really go in a very dark direction with this, exploring the secret yearnings of the heroes. What are their negative impulses? This, of course, does not do that, but it's something to think about. However, while Hal is being camp, a branch falls on him and it knocks him out. Knocks him down, at least. And as he's laying there badly hurt, Wildcat and Mr. Terrific conclude that it must be because the ring has transferred the wood weakness of Earth 2 onto the ring because to compensate for the lack of yellow weakness. And that means that they just beat him into unconsciousness with sticks in panels that when I shared them, someone said that it was like watching a hate crime. They just pummel him while he's already down. You can't see his face. That's the way his hair is falling in front of it. He's not okay. We'll have to carry on without Green Lantern. Go after Roland ourselves. After we put Green Lantern in a wooden box to keep him in his helpless state. That's called a coffin, Wildcat. They're about to bury him alive. Wonder Woman also has a great line, or rather thought, when she turns on Johnny Thunder. "Without any interference from you, Johnny Thunder." Wonder Woman, what's going into you? "Sheer evil." I like that she thought that rather than say it out loud, even though she totally could have. Hey, Johnny tells the Thunderbolt to stop yapping. 1960s slang that can work again in 2025. "You're next, Johnny boy." Now Johnny discovers yet another Black Sphere weakness when he decides to tell a joke to break the tension, and it works. His bad joke makes her laugh. In fact, a little too much. For laughter is yet another weakness of the Black Spheres. Stop, I can't stop anymore.
Jokes must be a weakness of the Black Sphere humans. Nobody could laugh like that at a joke, especially such a terrible one.
Say you, never mind the comments. Just tie the magic lasso around Wonder Woman. Johnny and his Thunderbolt have a "we're so annoyed with each other" comedy dynamic. The kind of, we really hate each other routine that if you took it even a tiny bit more seriously could get really dark. Just tweak it one iota and we're telling an entirely different story. Also, Johnny says here, "Let's go after Gem Girl so I can joke her into submission too." We're getting very close to choke her into submission, and this story had a lot of puns in it already. I don't know if that's meant to be one of them with some code subversion or if I've just been trained to look for puns. We did just come off of the scene where they said they were going to put Hal in the coffin, basically. Now, at the end of this issue, all the criminals end up together for the first time, seemingly meeting for the first time. They decide to divvy up the Earth. It is possible to infer that it's because the aliens are said to be about to gain control of their bodies that maybe now they're seeking each other out. These aliens were prepared for many things, but not for comedy. They laugh so hard that the Thunderbolt is able to blast the Black Spheres out of them, where they die. We can kill aliens. That's code approved, especially since we spent so much time setting them up as allegedly evil. The panel of the rest of the heroes showing up with all the weaknesses they found is amazing and really funny because they all look so serious. Wildcat and Mr. Terrific with their sticks, Hawkman and Green Arrow with their flowers. Robin didn't have to carry anything. Superman can do it. He put the water in a bucket for drowning. Now we get even more reveals as the story wraps up, and that's that the heroes were low-key fighting against the Black Spheres. So they were steering their friends towards their weaknesses, like death by drowning. The point of this ending mostly, though, is so they can dunk on Johnny Thunder by saying that they had already found the weaknesses, but they'll let him have this. Yes, why spoil Johnny's triumph by telling him we had the means of overcoming the Black Sphered humans? We'll recommend that there not be any legal action against these 4 people. They couldn't help acting as they did with the Black Spheres inside them. Even though we just spent several panels saying that the heroes were actively fighting against it, maybe it's meant to be because they didn't know. Maybe they could have fought against it if they knew. Those panels were really close to each other. Now the alien spirits are dead, they'll be their former selves again. Okay, but remember at the start of the story how Chu is about to be executed? Is he going back to that? This ending is more veering towards the possession route for these spheres, which Hal needs. He needs that possession get out of jail free card. He's gonna use it to great effect later. Now of all of these 4 characters, the Smashing Sportsman actually gets seen a little bit again. in a flashback in Countdown 46 during the History of the Multiverse section. It's because he had the most traditional villain costume, isn't it? So, with the black spheres gone, is his arthritis still cured, or does he have to go back to a life of pain? I have a lot of questions, but the comic has no time for that. We end on the JLA going back to their Earth to end their crisis using the same technique. They want us to assume that that's with jokes, but, we didn't see what happened to the bucket and the sticks and the flowers. Maybe they brought them with them. Maybe Superman's about to wail on some folks with a stick. And so, another crisis ends. This one feels much more like a stealth, or rather not even stealth, JSA tale with a JLA cameo. The ideas in this one are generally fun as a concept. Aliens corrupt some humans and create super criminals on par with the society, so they need extra help. But it's in the details that doesn't entirely hold up. Just in how everything comes together in terms of its own internal consistency, which is more noticeable because it spends so much time explaining things. There's also just not really an ability to fully grasp the threat level of the black sphered aliens because they're so different between each character. It never feels as serious as the ending makes it seem when they're divvying up the Earth. Now, for some, that won't matter, and they'll just be along for the ride and enjoy all the twists and turns. However, this one does have some moments, as mentioned, where things are contradicting or could be viewed as doing so. It also does at times veer towards feeling as if there's a bit too much exposition because it's happening in the narration as well as the thought balloons. Although some of those thought balloons lead to some of the funniest moments. The lack of uniformity between the sphere alien criminals' abilities by itself is fine. It's just even in terms of varying individually, they also vary in consistency within the battles themselves. It's not quite clear exactly what the characters can or cannot do. Now, with all that being said, it is still an entertaining outing. There's a lot of fun to be had with this story. It also does have some entertaining darker moments. Again, a couple that seem intentional, a couple that don't. The JSA and JLA will just go all out against each other. Hal is probably still suffering from those head injuries. Like the last crisis, this one has a bit more of a comedic air, but it's not as aggressive as the 66 issues. It's a bit more tempered and balanced in that regard. But overall, this is not the most memorable outing or the strongest in terms of the crises we've seen to this point. Even 66 felt like it had some grander potential, what with the Antimatter Man, which some felt was pulled partially as inspiration for the Great Big Crisis on Infinite Earths. There are some interesting concepts in this 67 outing. The negative spheres as an idea are ones that seem that they could work better if taken a bit more seriously. But as it stands, what we have is a fairly standard, entertaining, but not overly memorable romp with some weaknesses in terms of consistency. But of course, those are just my thoughts. Yours may vary, and we also want to hear from the people of the time. How did this land in 1967? We're gonna read some letters. There's gonna be some salt. There's gonna be some praise. They're gonna be long. Be forewarned, I like to read a couple of them, and they do tend towards the longest side, but it really helps to get into the headspace. They're kind of highlighting writers who write essays at this point, so some of the letters can get quite lengthy. There's actually one that I may skip around a bit. I'll put the whole thing up for you to see, but I might not read all of it because, time. I was really hoping that more people would write in about Robin's costume than did. Maybe many more did, but those were the smaller letters that didn't make it in. There's also a later history of people designing Robin costumes, and I swear part of that must stem from seeing things like this. With all that said, let's read some letters. Okay, this is the letter that's super long, so I'm only gonna read part of it because otherwise, oh my goodness, but it's interesting. It has some interesting facets. Dear editor, I'm always loath to comment, that does not show in the length of this letter, on the first part of a JLA JSA crisis tale. For in order to properly analyze the story, both parts are needed. Oh no, is this person me? However, I'm willing to make an exception this time due to unusual circumstances. For one thing, the art was unsurpassable, hardly unusual when coming from the Sikowski Green team. But what amazed me was how they could get so much beauty out of so little plot. Yes, Mr. Fox left much to be desired. The plot had lots of action, but it boiled down to JSA is defeated by 4 supervillains. They ask JLA for help only to find them in the same straits. What you had was the introduction of a menace, a few fights, and then everything was left for the ensuing issue. I only hope that part 2 is so exciting, startling, and original that my present opinion gives way to paeans of praise. I have mixed feelings about your choice of society members. By replacing the omnipresent Batman with his youthful successor Robin, you cleverly avoided incurring my wrath. Of course, I wasn't too tickled by the fact that he was modified to look Batmanish on the cover, but play your little games if they make you happy. Oh gosh. The appearance of the Golden Age Wonder Woman, now wearing the sandals the modern Amazon wore before she exchanged them for the old boots, served to confuse me more than ever. The belated appearance of Johnny Thunder and his wacky hexbolt is always a treat. For the rest, I don't know whether or not it was a coincidence, but Naria 1 had what you could truly call a superpower. They all had super skills. This made the tale a treat for all fight fans. Pow! But I'd prefer less emphasis on the fisticuffs in the future, with more stories where our heroes have to rely on their brains to escape clever traps and solve intriguing mysteries. It seems in the golden age, all one needed to become a superhero was a costume and a good right to the jaw. Sorry about that, Wildcat. The Justice League itself was rather slighted this issue, making a sort of guest appearance in their own mag. Your JLA choices were none too original. The overexposed Soupy, Flash, and Green Lantern. And lo and behold, Green Arrow? You could have fooled me. The way you treated him in Aquaman, I'd have sworn they were tired. Okay, this keeps going for one more paragraph, but you get the point. Also, in the next letter that I'm not going to read because that one was so long, but I'll show it to you. I do like this sentence in this letter. It says, still the fact that his bat ship did not make an appearance on either Earth represents progress. There's so much Batman salt at the time. Now, this next letter comes from someone who has a name you may recognize. Dear editor, oh happy day. The Justice Society has returned again to grace the pages of the JLA magazine. And what a return. The entire first part of the two-part minor explosion was devoted to the JSA. And the art. This puts down all those usurpers who say that no single artist can draw 8 superheroes from different mags and make them look the way they should. Pshaw, I say to you, pshaw! I was very glad to see that you didn't force Batman into the 2 stories, nor feature him on the covers. This is a major step forward out of the unholy darkness of Campsville. Of course, sneaking a grown-up Robin into the story was a little bit, but I'm glad it wasn't played up. The only thing that saved the second part was Johnny Thunder's role at the end. Any other solution would have been trite and cliche, perhaps even overdone. All caps. After all, how many times has the different weakness from each villain been used? Don't answer. I received a real laugh out of Johnny's proudness at having found the answer to the problem all by himself when the others had each found one too. Excellent. Gerard Conway, aka Jerry Conway. That's enough praise. Now for some hate. Dear editor, once again we find ourselves with the second part of the annual JLA JSA Classic. They say some things improve with age, but I have to say that this, the 5th annual 2-parter, was almost no good. The 2 latest stories had especially unlikely villains, and a hero grown out of mid-air, with a play on how they spelled air and air, cute, to join the Justice Society when there had been no previous mention of either himself or his mentor. I refer to Robin, that out-bat kid who has provided for the Bat fans. I think you have taken the aging process of the JSA slightly out of proportion, as Batman is in semi-retirement and Johnny Thunder is the same happy-go-lucky young fellow he always was. The end of the story, or rather the captures, were ridiculous. Every time anybody turned around, a new weakness was discovered for the energy beings. First water, then wisteria, wood, and wisecracks in quick succession. How one little form of life could have all these nemesis is beyond my comprehension. Somehow it doesn't seem fair. It seems as though with such a special story endeavor, extra care would be taken to make sure that the plotting was simple, not overdone, and clarified in all points instead of slightly off, overcasted, and a little bit muddled. Oh, Steven, tell us how you really feel. And Steven even got a sassy response because Steven was so harsh. Because your reaction to this particular crisis story turned out to be as negative as its title, don't assume that we didn't give it that extra care you called for. We sure did, for not only do these crisis stories demand it, but so do our readers, most of whom have approved of the results. Yeah, how dare Steven? You're allowed not to like things, editor, it's fine. Also, in regards to the familiar letter, isn't it always cool to see that fan-creator interaction and see how it's kind of a bridge to some people entering the industry? There is just this linkage between fandom and the space that is ongoing. It's baked in. But that process of appreciating, critiquing, showing one is deeply invested in the work, it is something that for some can lead them into the industry itself because they do care so much. Now, since we're doing crisis titling, there will be a fair gap years-wise in between this and our next crisis. So we're going to be jumping to a different era. By the time we come back, we'll be in the Bronze Age. And it will be for Crisis on Earth X, which time recording has been getting a bit more play because of Peacemaker Season 2. So we'll get to discuss a little bit of that too. So much to discuss, including how you felt about this, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this crisis. Please share them down below. Where is this rank for you in terms of just being its own thing compared to the other crises? Please share all your thoughts and do all the YouTube things like comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Hype if you're so inclined. Thanks so much for taking some time today to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.